It is day 4 of the Terry Smith era at Penn State, and we're going to talk to you about it for the next hour. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's BWI Live on October 15th. T. Frank, I was looking at the message board over at the Lions Den, which, of course, if you aren't a member, you can join to talk to us and fellow Penn State fans. $1 for the first week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And our friend Tigar, who's going to watch the show later, he's not going to be able to watch it live, but he mentioned a question, and I didn't realize this until he did, but it's going to rain all night in Iowa for Penn State, Iowa at Kinnick Stadium on Saturday.
Boy.
So when it rains, it pours, quite literally, is the way to describe things for the Penn State football program at this moment in time. How you doing this morning, buddy?
I'm good. We're getting into, and I hope that this is a little bit of a reset because Penn State football has to reset and they have to focus, and the season continues. So today's show, I'm hoping we can do a little bit of that. Look forward and not just hyper focus on a coaching search that just got started and won't be done for a while. And a lot of the stuff you're hearing right now is noise, I want to say, because sure, is X part of the conversation? Yeah. Is Y part of the conversation? Yeah. There hasn't, to my knowledge, and it would be ridiculous to do it this way. I'm just a little bit of talking on it. It would be ridiculous to narrow the search right now. Now is when the coaching search expands. And yeah, get excited about all the names you hear, but there's nothing in my opinion, happening at this early stage. It is the info gathering stage. So we're going to try and focus on Iowa and Ethan Grunkmeyer and what's coming up for this team and what to expect from the team this weekend. So trying to do a little bit of a reset while also keeping an eye on all those things going on.
Absolutely. So Penn State will be back on the practice field tonight. It's going to be the team's second practice since Terry Smith took over for James Franklin, who was fired back on Sunday. A programming note, because of Penn State's schedule this week, obviously Sunday was, I don't want to say a completely lost day for the program, but I think it's probably fair to describe it more or less in that way. Penn State was then off on Monday per the usual, its players, and then Friday it flies to Iowa. So a condensed practice window for the Nittany Lions this week means we will just talk to Terry Smith after practice and some players, of course, but we won't have that usual practice viewing window that we talk about on almost every other in-season and postseason Wednesday BWI Live Show. So keep in mind that as you're consuming content over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com later today, and also on the YouTube channel here, Terry Smith, T. Frank will be bringing you his comments. Second news conference he'll have as the interim head coach at Penn State around 6 p.m. Eastern time this evening. T. Frank, let's get into the rundown here. We obviously are in a situation now where Penn State, as you mentioned, athletic director Pat Kraft and his inner circle are amid a coaching search. There is, to your point, and as Nate Bauer wrote at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com yesterday, no rush, obviously. There's not really a whole lot you can do in terms of making a hire right now. Obviously, you can do a lot of groundwork for, laying the foundation for the process that's going to play out and so on and so forth. But the reality for the Penn State football team is that it has to figure out a way to get through 6 games in 7 weeks. And the reality for this Penn State coaching search from the administrative standpoint is that everyone that they're targeting has at least that many games to go. So there's only so much you're able to do in mid-October, but Penn State was able to get ahead of things here. I'm sure that it will obviously utilize every resource it has, both internally and externally, to get this thing done in a timeline that makes sense when it comes to the class of 2026 and the signing day and the transfer portal opening and all of that. But, yeah, it's almost like hurry up and wait at this point for this coaching search, and I think that's going to be kind of the theme of the conversation over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? The point is to get out ahead of it and to do as much work as possible. You got me muted there, bud. When you can make the decision, you've got all the information, and there aren't other relationships that have fostered between a UCLA or whomever else might fire their coach this year. You want to make sure that you have... It's like recruiting, right? You want to get out in front. You want to be the front runner for all of these coaches who might be part of the conversation and who might be interested in the job, so that you're not playing catch up and you're not doing all this stuff at the very last minute. Somebody said December 10th as the over-under of when this will be resolved. I think it's got to be resolved before then in terms of maybe going into the final, narrowing down candidates or whatever. I struggle with this is going to go into January if they want to have a coach that's maybe part of the college football playoff, because you might lose all your recruits. You might lose your 2027 Like there are so many things that happen, and the way Penn State has operated for so long is working ahead, right? Now they're back to ground zero with all these things, and that's the predicted part of this. Of the predicted part of starting over is you're starting over, but that you can do maybe irreparable damage by making this, like having this draw out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I think that is the needle that Pat Kraft and his inner circle, who's going to help him make this decision, will have to navigate. Personal opinions, you look at the signing day is for this class. Keep in mind that guys don't have to sign that day. Like, I'm very curious to see how this early signing day goes. It has become the national signing day, obviously. The one that used to be in February, the new one, and for years it's been the way, has been the actual signing day. But will that be the case this year? Like, I think we're looking after a pretty stable coaching carousel in 2024. I think we are looking at a very unstable one. Obviously, we have coaches out at UCLA, at Virginia Tech, at Penn State, at Arkansas, at Oregon State. More are coming, obviously. Like, this isn't the end of the road when it comes to coaches being fired in season. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting signing day for a lot of schools. Obviously, your schools that have stability will be able to sign their guys and take on as many of the uncommitted guys that want to come to them as possible. But I think a lot of schools are going to be doing work in the February portion of the recruiting calendar that's become almost an afterthought. So we'll see if that ends up working out that way. But yeah, all told, I think you have to get the guy right for the portal, T. Frank. I don't want to dismiss the high school portion of this, but I think there's ways around it that I just outlined. You got to be right for the portal. I mean, I don't see any way that you can wait till December 28th or 29th or whatever it may be to make a call. So will that possibly take the candidates
especially because that's what Pat Kraft was emphasizing, right? Like, this is the conversation being about the portal and being aggressive, and then, missing that window this year to make dynamic changes and hire a coach and have him bring in personnel that he wants. Like, all that has to happen within a timely order. And drawing this out past late November feels like a very precarious situation. By the way, is the portal window changing this year, or is it changing next year? Because if the portal window then happens in January, then this changes a little bit.
Yeah, important context. I wrote about this on Sunday over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. But keep in mind that as only the NCAA could do, it adopted new transfer portal rules that changed the game for schools when they fire a coach and as it relates to the portal. So UCLA and Virginia Tech fired their head coaches before the transfer portal rules were changed. So their players did have 30 days to go into the transfer portal after their head coach was fired. With the new rules that were adopted like 6 days ago, players could no longer go right into the portal in season when their coach is fired. So, I mean, Penn State was certainly aided by that rule change.
Yeah.
No question about it. Now, I'm not
6
sure how many
days.
Guys, right. I'm not sure how many guys would have jumped in anyway. And look, they have the opportunity to say that they want a red shirt or that they're not going to play the rest of the year. And, again, you get into the weeds of like how do the NIL contracts work and all that. But, I mean, I'm not sure Penn State would have been as hurt by that as people think just based on what happened at UCLA and Virginia Tech, which was very minimal. But either way, Penn State doesn't have to worry about it. So there is one transfer portal window this year. It's going to open in early January and run a little bit past mid-January. There will be a provision in there for teams that make it all the way through the college football playoff to have extra time to enter the portal at the end of their season. Steven, let me see if I can make it.
It's still very stupid.
Yeah.
It's still very stupid. Those players or those teams are going to miss the bulk of the window where players are going to be trying to go to those schools. Now, being in the national championship, you make a phone call might be easier, but like still very stupid for the final two teams to not be able to focus on the game and having to split their duties of looking at the portal at the same time. Anyway, minor point.
Yeah, Steven, let me know if the volume's any better now. I moved my mic a little bit closer. Thanks for giving a heads up on that. We'll see if we can get that fixed. But, yeah, I mean, I just think that, look, the only way to fix the calendar, and we're able to get way off track here, but hey, why not? It's the middle of the season. Penn State's 3-3 and has an interim head coach and a brand new starting quarterback, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in today's episode. But I think that when you look at the calendar, like the only way it makes sense to me is to push the portal back to like February or March and then push spring practice back to like May or June. And I just don't – that seems to be the easiest solution. We know that the NCAA and the member schools that make it up don't tend to agree on anything. So doing that is logical, yet probably very hard to accomplish. So I think that, that would be the simplest way. It's not going to happen this year. So, yeah, January is going to be fun, T. Frank. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and then you're kind of on the NFL schedule, right? Like, are you pushing back the start of college football season at that point because you're now going into camp you're going into camp into June, and then you got to be back in camp at the end of July? Like that now, like the TV side of things is a part of it, and the trying to be the center of attention on the sports landscape. Like we talk a lot about the NFL, the NHL, baseball, all of them having their own slice of the calendar, and the NFL having the entire calendar and everyone fitting in between it. College football is a part of that conversation as well, and having their national championship when they do and having a spotlight on that game. I mean, they even play it on Monday, so they're not going up against NFL games. And like all of these things are considerations beyond just what's best for college football. It's also the TV and the money side that is funding all of this. So I don't know. This is why I sit here and not in a very fancy suit in a tower somewhere making big decisions.
Well, T. Frank, if you want to make big decisions like possibly attending Penn State, Iowa in Kinnick Stadium this year, you can do so with our friends from GameTime.co. So you want to see Penn State, Iowa, and the Kinnick night game experience, the Wave to the Hospital, one of the greatest traditions in college football. You can do that with Game Time. Right now, the cheapest get-in price to get into Kinnick Stadium in the rain on Saturday night is $53. And that includes fees. The best part of Game Time, folks, we've talked about it every week, is that when you go to Game Time and look for tickets, they show you the price with the fees, so there's no surprise at checkout. You can use promo code ON3, O-N, and the number 3 at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. Like I said, my favorite part of Game Time and the app, is the app, number one. The app's awesome, and it's great. You can transfer things right to your wallet, so on and so forth. So when those internet connection issues pop up, when you're getting to the stadium, you don't have to worry about those, and you can see the views right from your seat, so you know what you're going to see before you get there. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ON3 on 3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. T. Frank, Terry Smith, as we mentioned earlier, is in his first week as the Nittany Lions interim head coach, and that means he has a checklist that is enormous, and I don't know how he could possibly get any sleep and check off all the things he has to check off in this week that he has been thrown into. I mean, he kind of joked and said that he and Ethan Grunkmeyer, another player we're going to talk about extensively on today's show, are kind of in the same position in terms of the fact that they were just thrown into this situation of head coach and starting quarterback. Iowa, in my opinion, I don't care how good Iowa is or isn't in a given year, not the greatest place in the world to go in the rain at night with a backup quarterback with an interim head coach. But we'll see how things play out. Crazier things have happened. So you're looking at Terry Smith's checklist for this week, and obviously it goes without saying his program's top priority is making sure its QB1's ready to go by game day. Yeah, and there's a... Drew Aller started as a sophomore, right? And I know that Ethan Grunkmeyer didn't get a ton of reps his freshman season the way Aller did, but I just this is the 7th week of his second season. He's not totally green here. It's not like this is getting Beckham Kritza ready to start, where you're pulling every alarm bell and you're trying to go under every rock to find every advantage to help the kid get ready. Ethan Grunkmeyer is a smart guy. He's been working hard at this for a while, and he should be able to function as the starting quarterback. We've seen true freshmen do this before. Now, the difference is, again, he hasn't been getting all the reps with the number one unit this year. He hasn't been getting all the reps as the starter. That's obviously going to change and has changed this week, but he's a part of practice. He has been in the meeting rooms. He's been absorbing this information. And so it to me is about what does he do well within the playbook and finding that out in very clear and concise terms. We know generally what Aller did and what he didn't do and what he wasn't good at. Now the question is, what is Grunkmeyer good at? And what can they emphasize in the playbook that maybe they didn't have an opportunity to do with Aller because of his personal preferences? And then, and on the other side, what is it that Grunkmeyer hasn't seen before from a defense? That's, I think, the biggest thing is
The basic stuff, I don't have a problem with him being able to diagnose and attack a basic coverage scheme. But when you start getting into combo coverages, you start getting into blitzes, safety rotations, that's where Iowa in this game is dangerous. And what they do, I think, fairly well is the that aspect of challenging the mental side of a quarterback who is seeing it for the first time. So to me, that's what it's really about, tailoring the playbook and finding the plays that he really likes and then building a plan out of that.
Yeah, and I think that the plan has to be built around the run game, and specifically Kaytron Allen. I'm not going to sit here and litigate the Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton. I forget how you put it on the post-game show, but it was pretty much perfect in terms of we can only say so much about that. We'll see what changes. I guess that's the thing that's most interesting to me, and this is not a checklist item necessarily, but I guess it kind of is, or I'm going to make it one, or at least try. But who else? How does the rotation work this week?
Yeah.
I am not a believer that James Franklin meddles in the offense. I am not a believer that James Franklin was telling his coaches, hey, this guy has to play because of X, Y, or Z. I just don't buy that. I don't believe James Franklin put himself in a position to lose 3 games and get fired because of some loyalty he has to a player or because of some NIL agreement that a player has. I just don't buy it. So I do wonder, though, Penn State was obviously of an opinion, and this was James Franklin on down, that Kobe Howard and Tysier Denmark were not doing enough things in practice to see more playing time. They were of the opinion on defense that the linebackers behind Amari Campbell and Dom DeLuca were not trustworthy enough to put on the field outside of a handful of plays over the last 3 weeks. Does that change? Obviously we heard what Terry Smith, to me, still stunningly said about A.J. Harris, where he wasn't hurt against UCLA. They just thought the options were better with him only playing 18 snaps in that contest after getting beat for a touchdown. So, with Terry Smith, a no BS, direct, blunt guy now in charge, what changes, if any, do they make? I mean, it's very possible, T. Frank, I think you'll agree that they get through the week of practice and that they still feel like the 3 transfers and Liam Clifford are their best 4 and the guys they're going to play the most on offense. It's possible they still get through this week and think having a 16-7, 5 series to 4 series split for Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton is the way they want to go. And it's still possible they get through this week and say, you know what, A.J. Harris actually is the best guy for us. We are going to start him, and we are not going to play more linebackers beyond Campbell and DeLuca. But I have a hard. I think that's. I would be shocked if the rotations are as tight at Iowa as well.
Yeah, especially going on the road, and you have to choose, the players you're going to take on the,
right?
Yeah. I think there's a little bit more going on with the A.J. Harris thing. Maybe then is there just on the surface of that one play. You don't bench a guy for just one play, but you do expect more out of a guy that they called a All-American candidate, right? And if you're an All-American candidate at corner and you have the physical skills that he does, he's a draft pick type of player. And so in that game to get beat that badly on a play that wasn't all that hard, that to me is you're talking about Terry Smith and the room he has control over made that decision. And I'm trying to find this quickly because I do think that when we're talking about the good enough aspect of the receivers, I'm having a hard time here because I do agree with you. I don't believe that they are necessarily sitting players because they don't believe those guys are ready. Or because of some other reason, right? And I'm sorry, I'm stumbling through this because I'm trying to find this, and it's just this one's incorrect. I'm just going to tell you right now. Kyron Hudson has been charged with 2 drops this year, according to PFF. There's more than 2 drops. That is ridiculous.
So in our Blue White Illustrated magazine, which goes to print tomorrow, and you can sign up for a subscription to that, bluewhiteonline.com. It is different from the online subscription to bluewhiteillustrated.com. But I was tasked with doing offense grades by position. T. Frank, you and I discussed these earlier in the week off air. But I went through the drops as part of doing the receiver grades, and I said, there is no if he has I can
count 3
drops,
already off the top of my head.
If he has only 2 drops, then I have 2 this year as well. And I have not suited up yet for the Nittany Lions. So that number is definitely higher. So
telling me that they're not here's another thing is they're 12 of 26 in contested catch situations this year. They have a total of 19 broken tackles as pass catchers. Kaytron Allen has 4. Devontae Ross has 4. They just need more guys that can. They need more guys that can generate offense outside of where they catch the ball. And that's it, because like they're only catching the ball 3 yards down the field at times, or in Trevor Payne's case, he's getting the ball 4 yards in the backfield. So how valuable is that if you're breaking a tackle and getting 5 yards? This offense needs a little more generation outside of that. And that's where I think I am not satisfied watching this team and then watching other teams and how they make it look easy to break tackles or get guys in space, and then that guy makes a play. Tysier Denmark and Kobe Howard, like I still struggle with the disconnect there. These receivers aren't necessarily performing at such a high level that I would say they're impeachable of getting them off the field for all the things we're just talking about. So yeah, that's one I'm once again I'm going to be looking for, because we've been looking for it for like 3 weeks. Hasn't happened. So, I'm bit of a I don't get that part. And if Terry Smith was willing to bench A.J. Harris, like, I got to imagine if he has more say, they're more willing to bench players across the board, or not even bench, just add other players into the rotation and give a signal of maybe some of these things that we're going to let guys work through these things, was, I think, really what was going on. Maybe there's less tolerance for that with somebody else in charge.
Right, and that's what I think is going to be one of the most fascinating things to watch for. But again, as it relates to the receivers specifically, like, I think we're going to have to be careful to draw too many broad conclusions if the weather holds. Like, they're calling for half an inch of rain all night. Like, they're supposed to start raining in the afternoon in Iowa City and not stop until like 2 or 3 in the morning on Sunday. So, I mean, if that is the case, and it's supposed to be like 20-mile-an-hour winds too, like, it is going to be a positively miserable night if the current weather forecast holds. Yeah.
Yeah, the wind is the most important thing there. It's not even the rain.
Right.
The wind and how it'll affect the ball is more important.
Yeah, so I'm not sure it's the right place to maybe insert a couple young guys who have not played a ton this year and may not be up to stuff as blockers, but we'll see.
They have been working with Ethan Grunkmeyer on the second team.
That's true.
Like, there is a small amount of like, that's the thing, is like, you could litigate just about anything in this situation. There are so many ways you could go with this. Like, yeah, they've been practicing with Ethan Grunkmeyer quite a bit recently. So
yeah, well, you can't make the argument anymore that they don't have the reps with Drew Aller and that you spent the whole preseason and the first 3 games getting the transfers up to comfort with Drew Aller. You can't make that argument anymore. So certainly that's something to move past. Another thing for Terry Smith, and I was just blown away. I'm sure you guys talked about it yesterday, but what he said about needing to be tougher up front in the offensive and defensive lines, and when you combine that with, because it's a whole mood, right? It's about being tougher, and it's about having fun. Like, these guys have looked miserable all year. I'm sorry. It even goes back to when they were winning. They have not looked like they're having fun. And they need that swagger that he used, and part of that swagger for Penn State, when it's been winning over the last 11 and a half years, is tough guys up front, guys having fun scoring and making plays in the secondary, and rushing the passer. And there's just, I don't want to say this team is void of joy, but certainly over the last 3 weeks, it's looked that way.
They were pressing so hard. Like, there was a certain level of desperation. And I think it does come from some of those leaders who had a lot on the line coming back this year and wanted to prove that they are everything and wanted to come back for a national championship. And like, there was a tight grip from the top down in terms of the people in the biggest and most important positions that felt like there was pressing. And when you're pressing, you're not having fun, especially when you're not having success.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was the case. So will this group play looser now? I mean, on one hand, it has nothing necessarily to lose at this point. It's already done the losing that's going to impact the way the season plays. So, like, will it finally play loose, or will it just kind of turtle and, kind of go? Like, I'm very fascinated to see how this team comes out on Saturday, but I think in a lot of cases you would write or you would say that the start's going to tell you everything. I don't know if that's true. I think the start will give you an indication of where things are going to go, but this hasn't been a 4-quarter team. It just hasn't. And so you're going to need to see it not just for the opening drive or opening 2 or 3 drives, but for the whole game. And I think that'll tell you a lot about where these last 6 games are going to go, T. Frank.
So going back to QB1 and the starts here, I know what you just said about the game plan in the rain is a part of this, but Ethan Grunkmeyer is and has been for most of his career. Watching him, he's a way more aggressive player. Like, he is... there's a certain level of arrogance in his talent that you see in the way he throws, and I mean that in a good way.
I was going to say, yeah, right, absolutely.
He's willing to put the ball into tight situations. He was willing to throw up the seam. He's willing to challenge safeties in a way that is more intuitive, I think, than Drew Aller. And again, I'm not trying to... it's always in comparison because of what we've been seeing. It's not necessarily in saying one is better than the other or whatever, but it's just what you've been seeing and what you've been your expectations. Here are maybe some of the differences for a guy like Ethan Grunkmeyer, and that does come to a certain aspect of starts because you felt Drew Aller get more aggressive as the game went on if it was close. Ethan Grunkmeyer, I feel like, is somebody who would step on your throat in the first quarter because he's just going to throw the ball down the field aggressively, which can be good and bad. And, that is how the start may go. And I don't know where it is and how they'll coach him through that. But when you're talking about the starts, I think that's something that I've been asking for is more aggression from the offense to end the game in the first quarter. And then, the cautiousness of the team is a part of that. What we've seen from them is kind of like it just always felt stuck in the mud and frustrating. So that's I think a part of that. And then the offensive line, that's where I think you have the most opportunity for growth in terms of playing better than the talent has given you. And then the defensive line, I don't know what to say, Greg.
Yeah.
Because Terry Smith is talking about toughness, right? And effort. And I don't know that two things. I don't feel like, of all the things, I don't feel like I'm qualified to gauge somebody else's effort or toughness playing football. As much as I can understand the schemes and I can understand what they're doing, one thing that a bridge I feel uncomfortable crossing is calling out somebody's effort unless it's obvious and it's detrimental to your teammates. What I see is incompetence, and that might be worse and that might be more insulting, but at least I can gauge that of player in gap is destroyed by offensive linemen, has been how this has been going recently. So when we're talking about fixing the defensive line, if there's a level of aggression, there's a level of strength, there's a level of whatever it is that they haven't been playing with, okay, the coach can say that, and then we'll be looking for that. But what I've seen is they just gotten their ass kicked, and I don't know how you fix that, especially given what we've talked about of the cascading problems of the linebackers and the defensive line. So that's going to be the main thing in this game. As a quick preview, what's coming up is how that defensive line plays, and if they have a fix for it, I would be super impressed if Terry Smith finds a fix for it, because I think that the narrative of this defense being too complicated is just overrated to a massive degree. They simplified the defense last week even further, and it didn't change any of the results. In fact, I think it made it worse. I think they played worse in that situation because they had changed some things, and they didn't have some of those aspects of Jim Knowles' defense that are different and were causing some teams some problems sometimes. Now they just had wide open B gaps where you got Zakee Wheatley trying to fill it from 9 yards deep. And that's bananas. There were certain things that happened in that game that are just unacceptable from a scheme standpoint because they simplified the defense. So that's not what they need to do, is beat the man across from them in the trenches. And that has been the thing they cannot do, and they've been doing worse over time this year. And it's not everybody. Zane Durant against Northwestern, he was what he needed to be. But across the board, it wasn't.
Yeah. This is BWI Live. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. It is October 15th. We're a few days away from Penn State taking on Iowa at Beaver Stadium. The Nittany Lions return to the practice field on Tuesday. They will be back on the practice field tonight and also Thursday, obviously, before flying out to Iowa on Friday for a 7 p.m. kick on Saturday, streaming exclusively on Peacock. I'm sure everyone's very excited about that. I'm sure Peacock is excited about that. I will not, I'm sure, get the maybe they'll get the signups they were hoping for. I don't know. I never pretend to know.
Not when they pick the game.
Situations.
Not as many as when they pick the game, for sure.
We'll see about that. T-Frick, any final thoughts on Terry Smith's checklist? I think that we've covered the majority of it. And at the end of the day, like we said earlier in the show, we probably could have filled an entire show going down the massive, massive, massive checklist he has to deal with this week.
I think the first thing that everyone was expecting and wanting and the next pound of flesh was Andy Kotelnicki, right?
Right.
And Jim Knowles to a certain degree. I think that people are when you're being paid the most, whatever it is, at whatever position,
right.
then there's always this highest level. It's like when the first quarterbacks got their $500 million contracts, or baseball players are paid $485 million over 10 years or whatever it is, like, you can never produce to the level of that contract. You are always going to be underperforming what you're being paid in the eyes of people that make $50,000 a year. There's just no way for you to make up that money. But like, in terms of the actual like process problems, I'm interested to see how the offense performs. Andy Kotelnicki's reviewed performance by the guy who didn't hire him, and how that will go. Because producer Jesse of Josh Pate's show, one of our part of our network here, said, "What if Penn State is UCLA this week?" And I said on social media, well, it's going to be a bad couple hours then for Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki, because part of it was they fired all the coordinators as well, not just the head coach. So I don't know there's a lot staying in place this week, and as Terry Smith said, want to get his feet underneath him before he makes any dramatic changes. But those are changes that I think are fair to assess, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that was a very interesting way that Terry Smith went about saying that. No immediate changes, which makes total sense. I mean, you don't need to throw any more chaos into this week, especially when you have a bye coming next week. You just need to get through this week. But he said no immediate changes, which leaves the door wide open for bye week changes. I don't know what that means. It could mean just about anything. When you're the interim head coach, obviously, they will give him, I guess, the opportunity to audition for the full-time job. It would shock me if he ended up getting it, no matter what happens over the next 7 weeks. But certainly part of that would be possibly making some changes like we saw UCLA make during the course of its lead up to beating Penn State. What those changes are, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any will happen. I don't know how much it matters, because most of these guys aren't going to be retained by the new coaching staff anyway. And so... I'm sure the contracts of everything will come into play, but it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a quiet bye week, put it that way, or at least the start of it won't be, and whether, it slows down towards the end like usual, I would guess, Penn State is going to want to obviously prioritize some recruiting work during the bye week, trying to get out and see some of those guys who have, I don't really understand this whole thing. I'm committed to Penn State, but I'm opening my recruitment. I'm willing to, it seems like if Penn State was giving these guys the message to put out, I would certainly understand it, because they all have the same message. So someone's giving it to them. But they have some work to do on the recruiting front as well. It'll be an interesting bye week, no question about it. Terry Smith probably gets to fly in the private jet now. That's got to be pretty exciting. I'm sure that's the last thing he's worried about at this point, but it is a perk of his current role. So long to coach class travel for him for at least a little bit. But yeah, T. Frank, that's where things are at this point, and Penn State is a 3-point underdog at BetMGM going on the road there. You want to slide best bets up, or do you want to save that for him?
Let's do that now. Okay.
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. All right. So best bets from BetMGM. I got to play a little opener here, which requires some scrolling. There.
Greg,
right. Yep,
I think for Christmas, I'm going to get you a second screen. So just like, I'm working with like a 27-inch monitor and a 23-inch monitor. I have got like a spaceship in front of me, and Greg's working off of one laptop. So like, I'm gonna get you a second screen.
To be fair, I put that whole thing on me, because I was going to ask you before the show if you wanted to move best bets up in the rundown, and then I never did, which means I was not prepared to have my screen where it needed to be, even though I knew it was probably something we were going to do. So at any rate, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3. Same one as you use with Game Time. ON3, ON3 ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app at sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. BetMGM best bets are going to start with Penn State, Iowa. T. Frank, the Nittany Lions are a 3-point underdog heading to Kinnick Stadium. The first time they've been an underdog is since, I believe, 2021 in a power for in any game, for a regular season game at least, for that matter. Certainly not a position Penn State expected to find itself in, but Iowa is laying 3 points. I really honestly thought this line would be higher. It is not. Do you have any thoughts on this game, how it plays out? I don't know if you did your prediction yet or if you've given any initial thought to it. But
Oops.
it's okay. Ryan will be the Ryan Wednesday text message is about 35 minutes away. Don't you worry.
So no, yeah, I do have thoughts on how this is going to play out. I don't think Penn State's going to have the ball a whole lot in this game, because that has been how it goes, and this is a better version of the Northwestern offense, where they're going to run the ball, they're going to short pass. This quarterback, they talked more about Iowa's a deep passing team, and they're going to throw the ball down the field, and then like against good teams, they went back to being Iowa, where
Iowa,
they just
buddy. Yes.
Yeah, they run the ball. I watched them run the same route to 81, the tight end, 6 times in 2 games. They just like it's a schedule-based offense. And so that's been Penn State's Achilles heel. It's not been as much the explosive plays. That's happened later. It's like they can't get off the field, and this is an offense that wants to be on the field. If Penn State has 3 possessions, more than 3 possessions in the first half, I will be shocked, because that's under. I'm going the under on everything for Penn State this year.
Yeah. So the total in this game is 39.5. I'm avoiding it because I don't know. It just. Something just feels off to me about that total. It just feels too high. Like it should be like 30. This game has like, I think someone said in the chat, like 9-6 written all over it, especially if it rains the way it's going to rain.
Yeah.
But also like the Penn State defense is giving up points this year, folks. Like
I think that's the thing.
Yeah, like that is what would scare me here. Not that Iowa's going to shut Penn State out like it just did Wisconsin 37-0, but if Iowa does get into the high 20s, I feel pretty good that this game's probably going to go over the number. So I'm going to stay away from that, but I am going to take Iowa -3. I prefer the money line, quite frankly, but we'll go with the point spread here. I just think that, as I wrote in my prediction, this will be the one week where I finally give up on picking Penn State and accept them for who they are this year, and then they'll win. Like I feel pretty confident that that's a possibility, but you can't pick this Penn State team to win right now. You cannot pick this team to go on the road with a backup quarterback and an interim head coach and win. So I'm not doing it. So Iowa -3 is one of this week's best bets from BetMGM. UCLA is another one, -3.5, with Maryland coming across the country to face the Bruins. Certainly UCLA just smashed Michigan State and has looked a lot better. Maryland has a ton of young players. Like I was looking at On3's midseason true freshman All-American team that included Penn State defensive end Chaz Coleman, and there's a lot of Maryland guys on there. So this is not a Maryland team devoid of talent. I just don't think it's going to go on the road and beat UCLA on a West Coast trip, which is crazy to say considering all the things I said about UCLA prior to the Penn State UCLA game, but not seeing it there. And then Frank, my last one goes outside of the college football world, and it's the Dodgers to win the World Series. -160 at BetMGM. I don't think anyone's stopping them. They're up 2-0 on the Brewers. I don't think either team in the AL, Seattle, the Mariners lead that series 2-0 in the ALCS. I don't think anyone's stopping the Dodgers train at this point. So 160 is a little bit more juice than I typically would like to pay for something like this, but I have a hard time thinking you're not going to get your money back. So
I'm a little shocked. Shocked that we don't have head coaching odds here on the on best bets.
So unfortunately, those are illegal in most, if not all, of the United States. So we do get the offshore ones, but not at our exclusive odds provider. So you know, and those markets are always just so screwy. Like it just. They are essentially publicity things, right? Like they get the name of the company out there that produces them. I mean, I don't know who's betting on such things. It's come from somebody who would bet on like 2 ostriches racing down my street. Like I don't know who is betting on that kind of stuff and what the market, like you can't be betting any more than like $20. So it is what it is. Anyway,
that was awesome, Greg. That was perfect.
I would.
I'm so glad I brought up this dumb subject so that you could come up with ostriches running down your street, because I believe it and I can see it.
Yep. Well, if it ever happens, Steve Frank, I'll get you on the phone and we will get.
Do they have jockeys
going?
Do they have jockeys, or are they just running?
The ones they race at Penn National between races once a year to have no jockeys, but I think they have like handlers or something like that.
Okay.
So sort of, yes, but. If ostriches are on my street, buddy, there's no jockey, there's no handler. They have escaped from somewhere or something, and It's going to be a little bit of a mess until they get to the cornfield behind the house. Anyway, that's the best bets. We got to play a disclaimer for BetMGM.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
Bold prediction from BKLYN USA in the chat. Penn State 38, Iowa 14, same as 2012 under O'Brien. I'm not going to pick at anyone's predictions based on the way mine have gone over the last 6 weeks, but have a hard time seeing this one playing out. A lot of differences between that Bill O'Brien team and this Terry Smith-led Penn State football team.
Yeah, for sure. I will let's get into the preview so I can talk about it.
Yeah. Let's do it. All right. Scrolling again.
I got you.
There you go.
I got you.
You got me. Thanks, buddy. All right. It's a time to preview Penn State, Iowa on this edition of the Blue White Illustrated Live Show. Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. 40 minutes in, and I see there's a lot of comments in the chat. We'll try and get to a few of those here before we wrap up, but we're going to dive into this matchup. I know that a lot of people, it was so funny on Monday when I wrote we have a game preview that goes up at 7 a.m. every Monday that Penn State has a game. And so many people just had no interest at all in talking about Penn State, Iowa. And there's been a few people that have reached out. But I will say, our content stream so far at Blue White Illustrated, and also I'm sure here on the YouTube channel, is just different than it usually is. And for obvious reasons. It's hard to really dive deep into Iowa or any future Penn State opponent with where this Penn State football team is right now. But we are getting to a point in the week where it's at least doable. So let's start with the Iowa offense, T. Frank. Let me give a 50,000-foot view of what you learned about them so far this week.
Wait, sorry. Iowa offense, you said?
Sure. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the defense first here. All right, let's go to the defense.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. I was checking something on the stream and I missed what you said.
No, we'll start with the defense and the conversation of what this defense can do against Ethan Grunkemeyer. Can Penn State run the football? And this Iowa defense, to me, T. Frank, I've not watched as much tape as you, but I did run down the stats. And it just feels like every Iowa defense ever. They're 8th in scoring defense. I think they're top 20 against both the run and the pass, or darn close to it. And they're just going to throw stuff at you, especially with a backup quarterback that Ethan Grunkemeyer has never seen.
Yeah, so I made the mistake of watching Indiana first and assuming that that's comparable to what Penn State has been this year, and it's not. I have to adjust my expectations and watch more of the Rutgers level thing. Just old habits die hard, right? Of what's the best competition they've seen.
You thought saying incompetent and talking about people not having effort was offensive, and it's brutal.
Yeah,
it's true, but it's brutal.
They haven't been playing that. They haven't been playing that sharp. They have not been playing with that level of precision that I saw from Indiana. And so, it is not comparable at this point, even if the talent is the same, or maybe even some situations physical talent might be better at Penn State, but they just haven't been playing like that, so it doesn't really matter. Iowa's defensive line, I'm used to them being a little bit bigger, a little bit better against the run. You can push these guys around. At least Indiana did. I saw Rutgers toss some guys out of the club, and I've seen more of that this year than I've seen in a long time, where you are getting actual double teams that the things that fans think happen all the time on the interior. I'm seeing more of it lately. You've got 285-pound defensive tackles, 295-pound defensive tackles for Iowa that are, they're exactly what you think they are. They're gritty, they're tough, they're technically sound, and it doesn't matter if they know how to go down to one need to take on a double team. If the other guy is bigger and stronger and they can throw him out of the gap, that happens. Now, does Penn State have the ability to do that? The left side of the offensive line does. And we've seen them occasionally be able to do that, but they haven't consistently gotten those double teams that we thought of we would get from Anthony Donko and Nolan Rucci, which has been just surprising. That of all the things I did not expect, Nolan Rucci regressing as a run blocker when that was the thing he was good at all the way back to Wisconsin is something that I was surprised by. And so you have things on this offensive line where if suddenly whatever magic fairy dust Terry Smith can find in the back of the office turns these guys into the best versions of themselves, Penn State could road grade the Iowa defensive line on certain plays in certain situations, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then in the secondary, again, well coached. They do a lot of disguising and rotation, but they don't. Two things are happening for them. And this is going to be the situation where if Penn State can hold up in pass protection, Iowa gets a little desperate this year, and they will start throwing a lot of blitzes at the quarterback. That can be good and bad, because if Ethan Grunkmeyer keeps his head and his wits about him, he'll be able to find completions in one-on-one coverage, and he can throw it, and then the receivers can, decide the rest of the story. Because he is an accurate quarterback, and I think he throws a very clean, catchable ball quite a bit. This secondary has holes. Number 2, the corner, I think he's beatable. I think he's been beaten deep multiple times so far this year, whether or not there's actually been a completed pass. Now, can Penn State take advantage of that? I don't think so. Right. We haven't seen anyone take advantage of that, but with a new quarterback that's, going to throw the ball down the field, at least in my interpretation of his skills, we'll see. So this is a beatable defense. If it weren't 20-mile-an-hour winds and rain, I would say I can see them putting up maybe a couple shot plays if they get to those things. Yeah. But you don't rely on any of this now when you're talking about the Penn State offense. So dink and dunk has been the skill set of the receivers. That's been the skill set of the quarterback. And you're going to get more of that against zones, and it's going to be on Ethan Grunkmeyer to find the right hole in the zone and throw the ball to that place and not get confused as to what the coverage is, because they will. The linebackers are good in terms of their coverage recognition, their depth of the drops. They're able to see passing lanes, and they're able to see the routes and pick up and pass off in zone. So they can do all of those things, but in one-on-one coverage, some of these guys are very beatable. And then if you can get the right formula, they'll blitz because they don't have a strong pass rush. Penn State's given up pressure to bad pass rushes this year, though. So I don't know that they can take advantage of all these things, but that's what's on film that good teams have done to Iowa this year.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of what this offense can do and how it can be different with Ethan Grunkmeyer leading the charge as opposed to Drew Aller with interim head coach who might be willing to press some buttons that James Franklin did not. En route to 3-3 to start the 2025 season and being fired back on Sunday. Yeah, I look at this Iowa defense. It's hard to get optimistic about what Penn State can do against it. I do think there's some opportunity for Katron Allen to get outside and make some plays in space. Perhaps Nick Singleton can do that as well. Again, we just haven't seen it consistently yet this season. And obviously we're not running out of time, but after the first half, you're going to have to see it to believe it with him. And so, yeah, the weather's going to be a factor. In all likelihood, I will say that it's still 4 days away. Weather, I don't want to get too hung up on that. It certainly, at the very least, looks like the wind is going to be around. Whether the rain is as much as they claim, we'll have to wait and see. But all told, I think it's safe to assume the Penn State offense is going to struggle to both move the ball and score points. And if that is not the case, you all will be very excited. T. Frank will have a lot to talk about on the post-game show, and that will make everyone happy, well, at least more happy, win or lose.
Can I also say this about the Penn State plan of attack? Because this is a very, again, but James Franklin said this last week, Northwestern is a lot like Iowa in a lot of ways, especially on defense, where they play similar style of coverages. They play a similar style of defensive philosophy. Lateral movement on this team is not valuable. Their linebackers are smart. They're disciplined. They don't overreact to things. So if there are jet sweeps and there's a counter one way with a sweep the other, and you're expecting somebody to run the wrong way, this is not the game to do that. This is not the game to try the close-up magic. And so, I don't know. If that's going to be in the game plan again, then there's going to be some dead plays. And so, I don't know how the game plan is going to change or is going to be formed in these situations, because I said this before the game last week, and it came true. And the same thing, copy and paste the conversation from last week. And if Penn State doesn't change the offense, I expect similar results.
Could they change it in this short of a week ahead of a road trip?
Yeah, just don't call those plays. Just don't call the plays that are expecting the defense to make a mistake. So there's a difference between, and I'll give some credit to play action, because play action is the It's the original deception play that has that. If you can successfully run the ball, that can be effective. But what I'm talking about is you've got a jet sweep from a receiver going laterally one way, and you've got a counter concept going the other way. And what you're expecting is the entire defense to react to the original concept and not have the discipline to see the receiver coming in motion. When Penn State has been a jet sweep or a lateral movement team, and that is not effective against teams that are disciplined. We saw it against Oregon, a disciplined defense that plays these zone structures. It can work against man coverage teams, but teams aren't playing as much man coverage on those early downs as they did previously when we didn't know Andy Kotelnicki's bag of tricks, right? And then the tempo plays into a trick play where you're doing a lateral pass to Liam Clifford, and then you're trying to get Khalil Dinkins on a corner route against zone coverage or against whatever coverage because the defense isn't set. This defense is going to have a call ready. They're going to make a play, and you have to beat them straight up, just like you had to beat Northwestern one-on-one in football. And when Penn State did those things, they moved the football, and then they gave themselves a tempo, no huddle, Nick Singleton run in outside zone that went for 0 yards, and now it's 2nd and 9. Right. And those are the situations where it derailed Penn State's flow and rhythm. If this is going to be a rhythm offense, you can't do as many of those things. And so that's the part where just if you just and for this week in this quarterback, simplify the playbook, right? I don't know what he's good at or not good at. They have a better idea, but simplify this to, I think you can add in more RPO against this team. Where you can add in a little bit more of the read option with Grunkmeyer. You can add in a little bit more of the RPO. I think he's good at those things, especially if you want to stretch vertically up the field. I think he can flip his hips and throw. All the way back to high school, he's been very good at that. So those are the areas, I guess, like if I'm building a game plan around Ethan Grunkmeyer and what I know about him, those are some of the things I want to do. But what I don't want to do for this defense in particular is a lot of the stuff that has been frustrating fans to begin with.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be some frustration coming. Maybe the only positive is that Ethan Grunkmeyer is not going to have the same level of opportunity to change things at the line of scrimmage. I can't imagine, which means you're going to get more things from the sideline. Does that help? Does that hurt? I don't know. But to the conversation going on in the chat, I just don't need to see any more jet sweeps. I'm really sick of watching that. Is Cooper Cousins available this week? So Terry Smith coined him as week to week or day to day on Monday. I can't remember. It's not a long. He did not use the words long term injury for Cooper Cousins, who did do some warm up work on Saturday against Northwestern, albeit with a brace on his left leg. He was out doing some jogging, things like that. I would expect we'll see him at some point this season. I would kind of be surprised, quite frankly, if he's on the travel roster this week, but time will tell. Certainly with the fact that you have it banged up, obviously Anthony Donko trying to gut it out and do as many snaps as he can, but was kind of playing only one half. Like that, certainly they'll take Cooper Cousins with him if he's able to go. Let's flip over to the defense here as we come down the home stretch of this week's edition, Wednesday edition rather, of BWI Live. Jim Knowles and his defense, I agree with you 100%. I listened to the post-game show. I didn't get to catch yesterday's show just yet, but I think that they literally we can't use the word I want to use on here, but it's like a mind mess right now. And I just think that they have now just I woke up Sunday morning and I was in this haze of like, what do I get ready? Like, what's going to happen today? And obviously you're thinking, okay, well, James Franklin could go. And then you're thinking, okay, well, if he doesn't go, is an assistant coach or two going to get let go? Then you say to yourself, okay, well, I have this regular Sunday stuff I got to get done. And I have this magazine work I have to get done. And we have stuff to prepare for later in the week. And all the while you're thinking so much that the work you actually are doing is just sloppy. And there's this, you get to that point where you have to just stop and slow down and say, okay, got to focus on one thing at a time here. And it just feels like this Penn State defense, in my mind, T. Frank, all year long has been just thinking, and everything gets sloppy because of that. And then they tried to simplify things last week, and it just made it sloppier and more think-based instead of fast-playing based. And at this point, I just don't know where it goes from here. I don't know how it gets better this season. I really, truly don't. It seems like it's just
I struggle with this conversation.
Yeah.
Because here's a couple of things that I've seen.
Yeah.
The defensive philosophy before of basically one gap, one player was Manny Diaz and then the way they made that work under Tom Allen is if you're going to have one player for every gap, what you're going to do then is you're going to play a lot of man coverage because you need to allocate more resources to stop the run that way. Penn State has been in a very aggressive, the difference is Manny Diaz was able, because it was his scheme, to blend in zone coverages and be a little more unpredictable because we talked about it after, I think it was year 2 when James Franklin was talking about Manny Diaz, and he said, it's surprising. It's not as much man coverage as you might think because they would basically play like a cover 0 shell over top of it, and it would look like man, look like off man. There was just more diversity. Tom Allen comes in. They keep the similar defensive philosophy in terms of the front, and then they play a lot of man coverage, and they have fewer answers, as James Franklin said. Now, they're playing a traditional style of defense up front. This is not complicated. It is different. So they are being coached, as far as I can tell. This is my interpretation of listening to Jim Knowles and how he has described his defense during coaching clinics. What I've seen from them on the field is you're asking your linebackers to make decisions. Like they have to mirror the running back and anticipate where he's going based on the run front. So there's just more thinking involved at that level. But this is not complicated. Other teams do that. The complicated or the intricate part, I think, is more in the coverage end, where you have multiple coverage families that you're playing, and you're pattern matching in defensive coverages that are zone coverages. So there is more on that side. But the problem has been the run front. It has not been the coverages. And the problem has not been they've been making mistakes. They've just been playing slightly slower. Then you lose Tony Rojas, and it's over. Like the conversation about the complexity of the defense is moot because you don't have the players to be in the gaps and make the plays. So the defensive complexity, it should be a side conversation at this point because the problem is they can't stop the run, period, stop, end of story. The whether or not they know how to read it, and Dom DeLuca has struggled to read what gap he's supposed to be in, especially against Northwestern. That is a secondary concept to the fact that even when he's in the right gap and they run blitzed him to get him into the right gap, he's getting pushed out of said gap. And again, I'm not trying to pick on Dom DeLuca. I'm describing the problem to you so you understand, like, it's not Jim Knowles and the complexity of the defense. Now it's a personnel issue. And
Right.
there was a personnel misfit, I think, with the defensive tackles and that style of defense when it was a very aggressive defense where they moved a lot and they stunted, they blitzed, and they eliminated the opportunity for double teams that way. Now these undersized defensive tackles have had to take on more double teams because you're not run blitzing a linebacker every other bleeping play. And so that's been the disconnect. It is not the complexity of the scheme. And here's the thing. As they've tried to adapt this, and again, people keep saying, like, the results aren't changing. They're obviously not adapting. The adaptation has been worse. Because what they've been doing is run blitzing, and they've been adding in more movement on the defensive line. They've been trying to get those defensive tackles off of double teams. They tried to get Zane Durant into more one-on-one situations, and that part worked. But as one player up front, he can't stop the entire offensive philosophy. They are not playing fast and aggressive now, I believe, because they've changed things. And they did respond, and they did try to simplify things. And then on the back end, you've got young players or players that are new that are not playing with the aggression when they're being told what to do. And I put some of this stuff out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I really encourage you, and this is not me doing a sell. This is me trying to explain this visually, which we don't have time to do on these shows. If you have set it up where Dom DeLuca is in the A gap, taking away the point of attack from the running back, and all the safety has to do is blitz into the other gap and be there for a tackle for a loss, and suddenly he's overthinking and he's not doing the thing that you set him up to do. He had one job on the play. You took away all of his other responsibilities with the defensive end dropping into coverage and the coverage itself, and then he's hesitating. That is the defender hesitating. That is it. That is the defender not playing with the instincts that he needs to play with in that moment. And it's not, these are, to me, again, I see personnel issues. Now, if these players are not playing with confidence and swagger and aggression and effort and all these things that Terry Smith thinks they can play faster and stronger and bigger and all those things, then I'll let him say that. But when I watch the film, as somebody who watches this stuff, I see a level of they're not doing the things that they're being asked to do, and what they're being asked to do has been simplified. And they're playing more man coverage. I know this is a super long rant, but like we're getting these questions still about defensive complexity. They're not getting beat because it's complex. They're getting beat because they're getting beat and they're simplifying it. And now it's easier to attack. And so, like, we've come full circle. And I really, if the end of this show is clipped into a long rant where you put like a clown nose on me, I don't care. Like, as long as people listen to this, like, the defense is simplified and it's not working again because it's predictable at this point. They're playing too much man coverage. So I don't know how to get off this ramp, so I'm just going to stop talking.
Well, I will say this. It's not good news for the Penn State defense. And again, I think like some of the issues on offense, it's just hard to fathom how it's going to suddenly flip a switch and be fixed or be better. I mean, there's personnel issues here, as you note. There is the way that personnel is playing issues, as you note, in terms of the talent they have versus the talent that we're seeing on the field. And, you know, I see some people in the chat wanting Penn State to play other guys. Again, I don't think Jim Knowles is sitting up in the press box watching his defense get shredded by Northwestern to end the game and thinking to himself, you know, I can't put this guy on the field. You know, he's better, but I'm not doing it. I'm leaving DeLuca out there. Like, he's not.
Yeah.
That's not what happens. I realize. Yeah. I get the allure of saying, oh, well, the other guy must be better. The backup has to be better. Blah blah. I get it. So, but he's not sitting up there just intentionally not playing guys to watch his defense get shredded. He's not doing it.
And to the point of DeLuca, and I want to give him credit of he's doing the assignments correctly, right? So that's the thing is we're going to use his skills and the understanding of what he is to make him a viable part of the defense. So again, That's what I'm talking about. They're run blitzing him because he's smart enough to know how to time a blitz and to get in the gap. And he did get some wins against Northwestern where he got in the backfield, he got a stop at the goal line, he forced the guy to make a play by bouncing out of the gap that DeLuca was in. But more times than not, when they're playing straight up, he does struggle, and he's not making the tackle. He's forcing the player to bounce, and then the rest of the defense is failing because for whatever reason, right? And it's a case-by-case basis. So with DeLuca on the field, they are trying to find the right combination of how to use him and how to utilize his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. And it's just like it's not all clicking. And so that's why you're using Dom DeLuca and you think we're still going to play him because fans only see the mistakes, but they're not seeing like the intentionality with how they're transitioning the defense with him on the field. Now, it is fair to say, as I just pointed out in a very long rant, the pivot isn't working. So do you need to then see, okay, now we're in rip the Band-Aid off territory. Now we are in plan A didn't really work. Plan B hasn't worked. Now what's plan C? And now that you're 3-3, everything should be on the table. But I don't think it's a bad process to say we trust this guy because when we ask him to do something, he does it. And now we need to find plan C. And so like I'm on board with that. I want to see Keon Wiley, but I also trust them to know that Keon Wiley has weaknesses as well that they think are more critically endangering to the defense than the guys they have out there. But so far that hasn't mattered anyway. So let's see. Let's all find out together this weekend.
Yeah, we certainly will do that. An epic rant by T. Frank to close the show. I'm going to give you a chance for final thoughts. The people in the chat want to know where the pumpkin that is over your shoulder came from. So you want to end with that? It's all you.
I don't remember. Like it's got like feather looking things. I think we got it at Home Goods. We get all of our nonsense decorations that are just nothing at Home Goods. I still need to go get my pumpkin. Like we do need to go to Wave Fruit Farm and get a pumpkin. And by the way, if you come in town, you should definitely check out Wave Fruit Farm because they're an awesome place, sponsor of the show and sponsor of the channel. So yeah, that pumpkin is just a nonsense decoration, probably from Wave Fruit Farm. Now, Two Kids wants to know who's the running back. That is Fred Jackson, the greatest running back of the drought era. One of my favorite players growing up because on a team that sucked, he didn't suck, and he made plays out of structure all the time. Fred Jackson is the man, and that's why he's in the back of the show.
All right. Well, it's $1 to sign up for Blue White Illustrated for 1 week. You can get the latest coaching hot boards, the latest insight and intel on recruiting, and also our breakdowns of Penn State's trip to Iowa. The Nittany Lions do go there as a 3-point underdog this weekend, according to BetMGM. So what do we got coming the rest of the week? Pretty simple. Tonight, Terry Smith, interim Penn State head coach, is going to talk with the media at the Lash Building. We'll have the video of that for you right around dinner time this afternoon, maybe in the 6:30, 7 o'clock range here on the YouTube channel and also on your podcast feeds. Check the podcast feeds and the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel tomorrow for the BWI Live Recruiting Show with T. Frank, Ryan Snyder, and Sean Fitz. and we'll have complete coverage for you from Kinnick Stadium on Saturday as the Nittany Lions look to end this losing streak that they're on and get Terry Smith his first win as the Penn State interim head coach when they take on Iowa on Peacock, 7 p.m. Saturday night. For Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. This has been another edition of the BWI Live Show. We'll talk to you next time.